The sky was not always an empty space above us. Long before the first powered flight, our ancestors filled it with incredible stories of machines that could fly. We are about to explore 25 legends of ancient flying machines, from golden palaces in Indian epics to fiery chariots in the Bible. By the end, you will see a hidden pattern in humanity's oldest dreams, a pattern that might just change how you view history itself. Were these tales merely symbolic, or could they be whispers of a forgotten reality? What does it say about us that every ancient culture, in its own way, longed to conquer the air? Our journey begins in the lush, epic world of ancient India. The Sanskrit epics, the Mahabharata and the Ramayana, are not just spiritual guides or heroic tales. They are also, quite possibly, the world's oldest and most detailed manuals of aeronautics. Within their verses, you will find meticulous descriptions of flying machines called Vimanas. These were not simple wings or balloons. The texts described them as structured vehicles, often immense in size, crafted from precious metals and adorned with jewels. The most famous of all is the Pushpaka Vimana, a flying palace said to have been captured by the demon king Ravana and later used by the hero Rama. It is described as being able to fly at the command of thought, changing its size at will and traveling vast distances between continents with ease. But the details get even more specific and more puzzling. Later texts like the Vaimanika Shastra delve into the mechanics. They speak of propulsion systems powered by mercury vortex engines, harnessing the element Vayu or wind for lift and thrust. They describe different types of Vimanas for different purposes, some shaped like spheres, others like long cylinders, complete with portholes and multiple decks. Even more startling are the accounts of their weaponry. The Mahabharata recounts battles in the sky where Vimanas launched projectiles that sought their targets, weapons that released beams of light capable of reducing entire cities to ash, and a dreadful device called the Brahmastra, whose effects read like a description of a nuclear blast, complete with fallout that poisoned the land and water for generations. So what are we to make of these accounts? Were the Vimanas simply brilliant metaphors, poetic symbols for spiritual ascension or divine power? Or do these ancient pages hold a different kind of truth? Could they be the garbled, mythologized memories of a sophisticated, technologically advanced civilization that was lost to time, its achievements remembered only as the magic of gods and heroes? The descriptions are too consistent, too mechanical, to be easily dismissed as pure fantasy. They present a coherent, if fantastical, aerospace technology that feels oddly complete. This first legend sets a profound precedent. It suggests that the dream of flight, in its most advanced form, was already fully formed in the human imagination thousands of years ago. From the sprawling epics of India, we travel to the silent sands of Egypt. Tucked away in a tomb near Saqqara, a small wooden object was discovered, a delicate artifact dating back over 2,000 years. It is known simply as the Saqqara Bird. At first glance, it seems like a stylized figure of a falcon, a common symbol of the god Horus, but look closer. Its proportions are unusual. The wings are straight and flat, not curved like a bird's in flight. Most intriguing is the distinct, separate piece at the back, a vertical tail fin. This is not a feature found on any bird. It is, however, a fundamental component of aircraft design, a stabilizer that prevents an object from spinning out of control in flight. The artifact lacks any legs or feet, and its underside is smooth. This has led some researchers to a startling conclusion. The Saqqara bird does not look like a bird meant to perch. It looks like a model of something meant to fly. The debate around this 7-inch-long object is anything but small. Mainstream archaeology classifies it as a ceremonial object or perhaps a child's toy, a weather vane, or simply a stylized bird with a decorative tail. Yet, its design nags at the imagination. In the 1970s, a doctor and model plane enthusiast named Kolul Messiha studied the artifact and became convinced it was a scale model of a monoplane glider. He noted its precise center of gravity located under the wings, which is ideal for stable flight. He and others built enlarged, weighted replicas of the Saqqara bird, and when launched, these models did something remarkable. They demonstrated stable gliding capabilities for considerable distances, proving the object's form is inherently aerodynamic. This sparked a wave of speculation. Could the ancient Egyptians have possessed observational knowledge of aerodynamics, perhaps from studying the flight of seeds or insects, and encoded that understanding into a ritual object? Or does the Saqqara bird represent something more profound? Could it be a model of a much larger, forgotten technology, a blueprint in miniature for a craft that has long since turned to dust? The absence of any propulsion system on the model suggests gliding, but what if the full-scale version was meant to be something else entirely? The truth is, we have no written records explaining its purpose. It sits in a museum case, a silent enigma carved from sycamore wood. It challenges our assumptions about the limits of ancient knowledge. Was it a toy, a symbol, or a secret kept in plain sight? Its very existence asks us a simple, haunting question. How did someone, over 2 millennia ago, conceive of a shape that so perfectly mirrors the principles of flight we would not formally understand for another 2,000 years? While Egypt's silent bird model hints at aerodynamic secrets, China offers a legend with a name, a date, and a spectacular flight. In the 5th century before the Common Era, an artisan of almost mythical skill named Lu Ban was said to have built a wooden hawk. According to the ancient philosophical text Mozi, this was no static sculpture. Lu Ban's creation, carved with incredible precision, was said to have taken to the skies. It flew from his home region to the distant province of Song, remaining aloft for an astonishing 3 days before finally returning to Earth. Now, 3 days of continuous flight for a wooden machine seems impossible by our understanding of physics, but legends often wrap a kernel of truth in layers of exaggeration. So what was the real story behind Lu Ban's hawk? Most historians see this not as a literal aircraft, but as a magnificent early representation of the kite. Lu Ban was a master carpenter and engineer, credited with inventing the cloud ladder for siege warfare, the stone mill, and numerous woodworking tools. It is entirely plausible that his wooden hawk was an elaborate, pioneering kite, perhaps one of the first designed to mimic a bird's form so accurately that it inspired the tale of a living machine. This interpretation connects directly to China's profound and ancient relationship with the sky. Flight in Chinese mythology was not just a physical act but a spiritual one, a way to commune with the heavens. The legend of Lu Ban sits within a rich tapestry that includes the story of the emperor who tied himself to a throne attached to 47 kites, an experiment that supposedly ended tragically but speaks to a deep, enduring ambition. These stories were not mere fantasies, they were the imaginative fuel for very real invention. Centuries after Lu Ban, this cultural fascination with propulsion and aerial movement would manifest in one of history's most transformative discoveries, gunpowder. By the 10th century, Chinese alchemists and engineers were attaching gunpowder tubes to arrows, creating the world's first rockets. These early devices, called fire arrows, were crude and unpredictable, but they represented a monumental leap, a direct application of chemical energy to achieve flight. The wooden hawk and the fire arrow, separated by over a millennium, are chapters in the same story. One represents the dream of soaring like a bird, using craftsmanship and wind. The other represents the raw power to push into the sky through force. Together, they illustrate a civilization that never stopped looking upward, turning legend into tangible experimentation. Lu Ban's hawk, whether a sophisticated kite or a story born from awe, symbolizes that crucial creative spark. the moment an ancient inventor looked at a bird in flight and thought, "I can build that." China's pursuit of flight moved from kites to rockets, but across the world, another ancient culture framed the dream of flight as a breathtakingly personal tragedy. The story of Daedalus and Icarus is one of the most enduring myths of the Western world. It is a tale of genius, ambition, and a fatal flaw. Daedalus, the master craftsman imprisoned with his son in the labyrinth of Crete, devises a brilliant escape. He gathers feathers and binds them with thread and wax, fashioning 2 pairs of wings. He instructs Icarus to follow a middle course, to fly neither too low where the sea's dampness could clog the wings, nor too high where the sun's heat could melt the wax. You know what happens next. Icarus, intoxicated by the thrill of flight, soars higher and higher. The sun softens the wax the feathers scatter, and he plummets into the sea that now bears his name. On the surface, this is a powerful moral fable about the dangers of hubris, of overreaching human limits. But if we look deeper, it is also one of history's most poignant technical manuals for flight. The myth demonstrates a surprisingly sophisticated ancient understanding of material science and physics. The Greeks identified the very real threats to a flying machine: moisture from below and heat from above. They conceptualized lift and drag, the need for a lightweight, carefully balanced structure. Daedalus is not a magician, he is an engineer solving a problem with the materials at hand. This leads to a provocative question. Could this story be a mythologized memory of early and tragically failed experiments with gliders or primitive wings? We know the Greeks were brilliant inventors, creating complex devices like the Antikythera mechanism. Is it so hard to believe that a daring artisan might have tested wings made from stretched linen or leather, with results that became legendary? The myth of Icarus is not Greece's only flight story. It exists alongside tales of divine flight like Pegasus, the winged horse. But Pegasus represents a gift from the gods, a magical form of travel inaccessible to humans. Daedalus and Icarus are different. Their flight is a product of human intellect and craftsmanship. It is technology, not magic. Their story marks a pivotal shift in imagination, placing the power of flight directly into human hands, while also issuing a solemn warning about the responsibility that comes with it. It captures the eternal tension at the heart of all invention, the exhilarating climb of discovery and the ever-present risk of a catastrophic fall. The fall of Icarus is a story of human limitation, but across the Atlantic, ancient artisans crafted objects that seem to defy the very timeline of aviation. Deep within the river valleys of Colombia, between the years 500 and 1000 of the Common Era, the Quimbaya and Tolima cultures produced hundreds of small, intricate artifacts from an alloy of gold and copper called tumbaga. To the untrained eye, they are beautiful stylizations of the natural world, likely representing insects like dragonflies or beetles, or perhaps stylized birds and bats, creatures held sacred in their cosmology. But hold one of these objects in your hand and a strange feeling might creep in. The shape is unsettlingly familiar in a way that has nothing to do with biology. Many of these so-called Quimbaya artifacts possess a rigid, geometric symmetry that living things simply do not have. They feature distinct, swept-back delta wings that come to a sharp point, exactly like the wings of a modern supersonic jet or a space shuttle. They have a raised central fuselage and at the rear a clear vertical tail fin, a stabilizer. Some even show a demarcated section at the front that looks for all the world like a cockpit or a canopy. When you place a high-resolution image of one of these artifacts next to a schematic of a fighter jet or the Concorde, the resemblance is not just suggestive, it is startling. It is as if an ancient goldsmith sketched a blueprint for an aircraft they could never have seen. Mainstream archaeology offers a perfectly rational explanation. These are zoomorphic figures, stylized representations of flying fauna. The delta shape could be an artistic simplification of a bird's wings in a diving posture, or the elongated body of a flying fish. The raised central section could be the insect's thorax, the tail fin its abdomen. They were likely ritual objects, amulets for spiritual flight, or symbols of status and connection to the spirit world. This interpretation is grounded and logical, respecting the cultural context of the people who made them. Yet, the ancient astronaut theory presents a far more dramatic possibility. Proponents argue that the level of specific aerodynamic detail is too precise to be accidental. They ask, why would an artist meticulously include a separate, perfectly vertical tail fin on a dragonfly, an insect that does not have one? Why the rigid, angular lines so contrary to the organic curves of nature? Could these be attempts to depict advanced flying machines witnessed by these cultures, interpreted through their own artistic lens and rendered in their most precious material? The truth likely lies somewhere in the fascinating middle ground of human perception. Our modern eyes are conditioned to see aircraft, so we project that image onto the past. Yet, the artifacts undeniably exist, and their form is undeniably aerodynamic. Perhaps they represent a convergence where the observation of natural flight, the spiritual desire for ascension, and an intuitive grasp of stable shapes in the air all coalesced into these golden enigmas. They are not models of jets, but they might be models of an idea, a dream of perfect, powered flight captured in metal centuries before the science existed to explain it. They force us to confront a profound question about ancient art. Are we looking at what they intended to show us, or are we seeing a reflection of our own technological world in their sacred symbols? Gold artifacts from the Americas present a silent riddle, but a voice from the ancient Near East describes a vision so mechanically bizarre it has echoed for millennia. In the 6th century before the Common Era, the prophet Ezekiel, exiled in Babylon, experienced a divine revelation that begins not with words but with a spectacle in the sky. He describes a great storm cloud approaching with flashing lightning and brilliant fire. From within this tempest emerges something utterly alien, a vehicle he calls the Merkaba, or chariot of God. His description is meticulous and surreal. He sees 4 living creatures, each with 4 faces and 4 wings, their legs straight and their feet like burnished bronze. Beside each creature is a wheel, and this is where the account becomes truly puzzling. Ezekiel says the wheels appeared to be made of beryl, a gleaming yellow-green stone, and they were constructed as a wheel within a wheel. They could move in any of 4 directions without turning, and their rims were tall and awesome, covered all over with eyes. The entire structure moved with a sound like rushing waters, like the voice of the Almighty, like the roar of an army. Wherever the spirit would go, the wheels would go, rising from the earth with the creatures, for the spirit of the living creatures was in the wheels. For 2,000 years, this vision has been a cornerstone of mystical Jewish thought, the Merkaba representing the throne chariot of God, a complex symbol of divine presence, mobility, and omniscience, with the eyes signifying God's all-seeing knowledge. The theological interpretation is profound and deeply rooted. Yet, in the modern age, a very different reading has emerged. When viewed through a technological lens, Ezekiel's account reads less like abstract symbolism and more like an eyewitness struggling to describe advanced machinery. The wheel within a wheel could be interpreted as gyroscopic gears or concentric rings allowing omnidirectional movement. The gleaming beryl might describe polished metal or glass like canopies. The eyes covering the rims could be lenses, portholes, or illuminated panels. The straight legs with burnished bronze feet sound like landing gear. The immense noise, like a roaring army or mighty waters, is reminiscent of powerful engines or thrusters. And most tellingly, the vehicle moves in unison with the spirit or wind, suggesting a pilot or an intelligent guidance system controlling its flight path. This speculative interpretation asks us to consider a shocking possibility. Could Ezekiel, a man from an Iron Age culture, have witnessed an extraordinary aerial phenomenon, something so far beyond his frame of reference that he could only describe it in the only terms he had? comparing it to living creatures, heavenly wheels, and the throne of God. His need to anchor the vision in familiar, sacred imagery is understandable. How else would you describe a sleek, metallic craft with multiple propulsion units and glowing lights to people who had never seen anything more complex than a chariot? The enduring power of Ezekiel's vision lies in this very tension. It stands at the perfect crossroads of faith and speculation. It is a rich, spiritual text that has inspired breathtaking art from Renaissance painters to mystical diagrams. Simultaneously, it is a detailed report that, when stripped of its theological context, presents a coherent, if bewildering, picture of a structured flying machine. This forces a fascinating question upon us. When ancient people looked to the heavens for gods, were they sometimes instead glimpsing technology so advanced it was indistinguishable from divinity? The wheels within wheels keep turning, not just in the sky of Ezekiel's vision, but in our own endless search for meaning in the mysteries of the past. The wheels of Ezekiel's vision spin with divine mystery, but another ancient legend offers a far more intimate form of flight. It is woven not from metal or fire, but from thread and dye, a simple textile that carries its rider across the world. The magic flying carpet is one of the most enduring and beloved icons of Middle Eastern folklore, immortalized in tales like the 1001 Nights. In these stories, a command or a special phrase causes a humble rug to lift gracefully from the floor, soaring over deserts and palaces, carrying heroes to rescue princesses or discover hidden treasures. Its origins are as layered as the finest Persian weave, likely stretching back to ancient Persian myths and perhaps even earlier Mesopotamian stories of gods traveling on clouds or sacred fabrics. But the flying carpet is more than a convenient plot device. It is a powerful symbol. For kings and sultans, it represented absolute power and dominion, the ability to survey one's entire kingdom in an instant. For the common person in the tales, it symbolized freedom, escape, and the magical conquest of impossible distances. It answered a universal human yearning to transcend the exhausting, dangerous realities of travel by camel or on foot, to move with the speed of thought itself. This deep-seated desire makes us wonder, could there be a tiny, practical seed from which this magnificent legend grew? Some historians and folklorists have proposed a fascinating connection to the earliest principles of aerostatics. Imagine a vast ceremonial textile, perhaps used in a temple ritual or a royal procession. In the heat of a fire-lit ceremony, with braziers burning below and the fabric held aloft on poles, might observers have seen the giant cloth billow and rise, seemingly with a life of its own. The basic physics of hot air rising under a light material was observable, even if not understood. A massive canopy catching a powerful thermal updraft could have created a fleeting, awe-inspiring illusion of a rug trying to take flight. This experience, repeated and magnified through generations of storytelling, could have crystallized into the legend of the obedient, soaring carpet. The visual legacy of this dream is breathtaking. Persian miniature paintings depict heroes reclining comfortably on ornate rugs as they float past crescent moons and intricate cityscapes, a serene and elegant form of travel. These images were not just illustrations, they were manifestations of a cultural dream, a fusion of supreme artistic skill and boundless imagination. Centuries later, classic films would bring this vision to life with dazzling color and movement, cementing the flying carpet in our global consciousness as the ultimate symbol of wonder. So while we know a woven rug cannot fly by command, the legend persists because it captures a truth more profound than physics. It represents the human spirit's refusal to be bound by geography, its insistence that even the most ordinary object touched by imagination can become a vessel for the extraordinary journey. The magic carpet offered freedom through effortless travel, but in the frozen north, another culture dreamed of vehicles that conquered not just distance, but the very fabric of reality. In the rich tapestry of Norse mythology, the gods possessed wondrous conveyances that defied earthly limits. The most famous of these was Skidbladnir, the ship of the god Freyr. Crafted by dwarven masters, this vessel was described as the finest ship ever built. It was large enough to carry all the gods and their weapons, yet its true magic lay in its paradoxical nature. When not in use, Skidbladnir could be folded up like a piece of cloth and carried in a pouch, and whenever its sail was raised, it always found a favorable wind, allowing it to travel not just across any sea, but over land as well. This idea of a ship traversing solid ground blurs the line between seafaring and flight, suggesting a vehicle unbound by the ordinary rules of terrain. It was a vessel that could go anywhere, a perfect symbol of absolute mobility. Skidbladnir was not alone. Odin, the All-Father, rode an 8-legged horse named Sleipnir, an animal so fast and mighty it could gallop between the 9 worlds of the Norse cosmos, moving from the realm of the gods to the land of the dead. These are not simple tales of magic, they are profound reflections of the Viking worldview, born from a people who were master navigators of treacherous seas. Their myths elevated their greatest skill, seafaring, into the divine realm. A ship that never lacked for wind was the ultimate fantasy for a sailor dependent on unpredictable gusts and currents. A horse that could cross impossible boundaries mirrored their own epic voyages into unknown lands. The imagery from Norse art and saga illustrations often shows these legendary beings in dynamic motion, Sleipnir leaping through swirling cosmic patterns, Skidbladnir with its sail full on a stylized wave. These stories represent a conceptual leap. They are not about imitating birds, but about creating vehicles that transcend all natural categories of travel. The ship that folds and the horse that gallops through air and earth are precursors to the flying machine because they embody the same core desire: to move through the world without obstacle, to render geography meaningless. For the Vikings, the ultimate vehicle was not one that flew above the clouds, but one that could navigate the very tree of existence itself. This mythological thinking, where a single object can sail, roll, and glide, plants a crucial seed in the human imagination, the seed of a multi-purpose craft that answers to human will alone. Far from the frozen seas of Norse myth, under the vast, sun-baked skies of Australia, the oldest continuous culture on Earth tells a different kind of sky story. For the Aboriginal peoples, the Dreamtime is not a distant past but a living reality, a foundational era when ancestral beings shaped the world. Many of these powerful creators did not emerge from the earth or the sea, they descended from the heavens. These are the sky heroes, beings who arrived from the stars or traveled across the celestial dome, bringing the laws of life, language, and land. Among the most striking of these figures are the Wandjina from the Kimberley region in the northwest. The images of the Wandjina are unforgettable. Painted on the walls of sacred rock shelters, they appear as large, ghostly figures, often in white ochre, with large, dark eyes and a face that lacks a mouth. Most strikingly, their heads are surrounded by a radiant halo or helmet-like band, from which lines of energy often emanate. They are not depicted as human, nor are they animals. They are something else entirely, powerful sky beings intrinsically linked to the monsoon rains, the lifeblood of the harsh landscape. According to the traditions of the Warora, Ungaranian, and Wunumbal peoples, the Wandjina came from the Milky Way during the Dreamtime. They created the country's features, its rivers and gorges, and then painted their own images on the rock walls before transforming into spirits within the rock or returning to the sky. Their power is so great that repainting the images, a ritual act performed by senior custodians, is believed to renew the world itself, calling the life-giving rains. To view these ancient paintings, some estimated to be thousands of years old, is to feel a profound sense of otherworldly presence. The landscapes they inhabit are monumental, with towering orange cliff faces and silent gorges that feel like natural cathedrals. The art itself against this backdrop is not mere decoration. It is a sacred interface, a conduit between the people, the land, and the sky beings who formed it. While the Wandjina are clearly spiritual ancestors, not mechanical devices, their stories fit into that compelling global pattern we have been tracing, the ancient interpretation of aerial phenomena and visitors. The haloed heads, the descent from the sky, the association with immense creative and destructive power, these are motifs we have seen echoed across continents. Here, however, the narrative is not about a chariot or a ship. It is about the beings themselves, entities whose very form and origin story suggest a celestial connection so fundamental it is woven into the lore and the landscape. The Wandjina remind us that the human impulse to look up and wonder is universal. Whether it is described as a Merkaba's wheels or a sky hero's radiant arrival, the core experience is the same. An awe-inspiring encounter with something from above that forever changes the world below. These paintings are perhaps the most powerful evidence that the legend of ancient flying machines is not really about machines at all. It is about the transformative moment of contact, remembered and honored for millennia in the only way our ancestors knew how. Ambition has always yearned for wings, and no figure embodied that yearning more than Alexander the Great. Centuries after his death, his legend soared into the realm of pure fantasy with a story that captured the medieval imagination. In the wildly popular Alexander romance, a collection of tales that mixed history with outright myth, a new chapter was added to the conqueror's exploits. It tells of Alexander, unsatisfied with merely conquering the earth, deciding to conquer the sky itself. His method was as ingenious as it was terrifying. He constructed a large basket or chariot and tethered to it a team of powerful griffins, the mythical beasts with the body of a lion and the head and wings of an eagle. To motivate these creatures to fly upward, he attached spears to the chariot, each one holding a piece of raw, tempting meat just out of the griffin's reach. Desperate for the food, the great beasts would flap their wings and ascend, carrying Alexander and his vehicle higher and higher into the heavens toward the very dome of the sky. This fantastical tale was not a minor footnote. It spread like wildfire from Europe to Persia and beyond, adapted and illustrated in countless manuscripts. The scene became a favorite of medieval illuminators who painted Alexander in his peculiar flying machine, often looking down with awe at a tiny, curved world below, the griffins straining at their tethers. On one level, this is pure allegory. It is the perfect metaphor for Alexander's own insatiable drive, his ambition that could never be satisfied, lured ever onward by the next prize just beyond his grasp. The story transforms his earthly conquests into a celestial quest, framing the human desire to explore the unknown as a literal ascent. But there's something more visceral in the imagery. It reflects a medieval understanding of flight, not as a matter of engineering, but of harnessed animal power, of dominating nature's most majestic creatures to achieve the impossible. The griffins themselves are symbolic, combining the king of the beasts and the king of the birds, representing total dominion over land and air. This legend shows how a historical figure can be completely remade by the dreams of later generations. The real Alexander marched across continents, but the legendary Alexander flew. His story became a vessel for humanity's oldest and most persistent fantasy, proving that even the greatest conqueror in history was not complete until the myths gave him wings. Alexander harnessed mythical beasts to reach the heavens, but in the high, thin air of the Himalayas, seekers pursued flight through the mastery of their own bodies. The Tibetan Buddhist tradition speaks of a secret practice called Lung Gampa, a discipline so profound its adepts were said to traverse the mountain plateaus with impossible speed. These Lung Gampa runners did not use wings or engines. Their vehicle was their own form, propelled by a deep, meditative trance that allowed them to cover hundreds of miles in a single day. Moving with such effortless grace, they appeared to glide just above the earth, their feet scarcely touching the ground. This legend is not about a machine, but about the human body and mind transformed into one. The most famous account comes from the intrepid explorer and Buddhist scholar Alexandra David Neal, who claimed to have witnessed such a runner during her travels in Tibet in the early 20th century. She described seeing a figure in the distance, moving with a strange, rhythmic, bouncing gait at an astonishing pace. As he drew nearer, she noted his fixed, wide-eyed stare, absorbed in a deep state of concentration, seemingly unaware of his surroundings. He passed by like a phantom, and when she inquired about him, locals told her he was a Lung Gampa practitioner, not to be disturbed during his journey. The training for such a feat was said to be grueling and esoteric, taking years of isolated retreat. Practitioners would meditate for months in complete darkness to refine their inner vision and cultivate a powerful control over the subtle energy winds or lung within the body. Through specific breathing techniques, visualization, and mantra, they aimed to make their physical form incredibly light, almost buoyant, reducing the friction between body and earth. The goal was to enter a state where the mind's focused intent could override normal physical limitations, where running became a form of levitation. Skeptics, of course, offer more grounded explanations. They point to the incredible endurance of Himalayan monks, the effects of high altitude on perception, and the known phenomenon of long-distance trekking in a meditative state, which can create a dissociative, floating sensation. Yet, the legend persists because it touches on a universal aspiration, the dream of unshackling ourselves from gravity through sheer willpower. In the context of ancient flying machines, the Lung Gampa runner represents the most intimate version of the fantasy. It suggests that the ultimate vehicle was not built from metal or wood, but cultivated from within, a sacred technology of the self. Where the Vimana conquers the sky through engineering, the runner conquers it through enlightenment, both paths leading to the same breathtaking horizon of human potential. The dream of flight can also wear a cloak of shadow and silence, a form that inspires not wonder, but a deep, primal dread. In the rich oral traditions of the Maori people of New Zealand, there exists a haunting legend of the Manu Topo, the bird of death. This was no ordinary creature, described in some accounts as a large, dark, and utterly silent bird. It was said to appear as an omen of disaster or to carry people away into the sky, never to be seen again. The stories vary, but the core image is consistent, a massive, predatory presence in the air that moves without sound, a void in the soundscape of the forest. To the modern ear, this description triggers an immediate and familiar echo. A large, dark, silent object capable of swift, abduction-like flight. It reads almost exactly like a contemporary report of an unidentified flying object, a classic black triangle or disk observed in the night sky. This parallel has led some researchers to suggest that these ancient stories could be early cultural records of UFO phenomena, encounters with something truly otherworldly preserved in the mythological language of the time. Yet, to leave the interpretation, there would be to overlook the profound depth of the Maori worldview. In traditional Maori cosmology, the natural and spiritual worlds are intimately intertwined. Birds held immense symbolic power, acting as messengers between the realm of the living, Te Ao Marama, and the realm of the ancestors, Te Po. A strange or ominous bird was rarely just a bird, it was a sign, a portent. The Manu Topo, therefore, fits perfectly into a system where the environment itself communicates. It could very well be a personification of a terrifying but natural event. Imagine the experience of a sudden, violent weather phenomenon in the dramatic landscapes of New Zealand. A silent, black funnel cloud descending from a storm, a waterspout over the sea, or the eerie stillness before a devastating landslide. Such an event, witnessed by people with a deep, animistic understanding of the world, could easily be interpreted as a great, silent bird of the gods, a physical manifestation of divine wrath or a spiritual summons. This is the genius of indigenous oral history. It encodes complex observations of the natural world, astronomy, and ecology into powerful, memorable metaphors that carry meaning across generations. The intricate carvings on a Maori meeting house or Waranui tell these stories. The stylized forms of birds and spirits are not mere decoration, they are a library, a map of knowledge and belief. The Monu Topo, carved into wood or spoken in chant, was a way to understand and contextualize the terrifying and unexplainable forces of nature. It served as both a warning and an explanation, grounding a frightening experience within a spiritual framework that gave it meaning. So, was the bird of death a primitive description of an alien craft? Or was it a brilliant metaphorical container for the raw power of a storm, the mystery of death and the unknown? The legend likely holds both truths simultaneously. It shows us that the human mind, when confronted with the inexplicable in the sky, will always reach for the most powerful narrative tools it has, whether they are gods, birds, or in our own time, spacecraft from distant stars. The silent, dark bird still flies in the stories, reminding us that every mystery is first seen through the lens of the world we already know. The silent, predatory flight of the Monu Topo finds a strange and beautiful echo in the misty highlands of the Celtic world. Here the sky was not a void but a sea, and what sailed upon it were not birds but ships. Medieval Irish and Welsh texts are filled with accounts of aerial ships, ghostly vessels glimpsed sailing through the clouds, their sails billowing with an unfelt wind. One famous tale from the 12th century Book of Leinster describes a silver boat appearing in a haze, floating above a plain before vanishing into the air. These were not isolated sightings, they were woven into a larger, more haunting tapestry known as the ferry host, or in Irish, the slua she. This was a tumultuous, often terrifying airborne procession of supernatural beings. Witnesses described hearing a great roar like a rushing wind, seeing swirling lights, and glimpsing a cavalcade of spectral riders and carriages charging across the night sky. The sound was said to be so powerful it could strip leaves from trees or bring madness to those who heard it. Today, we might immediately label such an experience as a UFO flap or a complex atmospheric mirage, and the comparison is compelling. The chaotic lights, the deafening roar, the sense of a structured, intelligent force moving with purpose, it all fits a very modern pattern of encounter. But for the Celts, this phenomenon had a name and a home. The slua she was the cavalry of the otherworld, the realm of the Shia or fairy folk. These were not cute sprites, they were powerful, capricious, and often dangerous deities diminished by time and Christianity into folkloric figures. Their wild ride was most commonly reported during the liminal times of the year, the eves of Samhain, which we know as Halloween, and Beltane, the start of summer. These were moments when the veil between our world and the otherworld was believed to be at its thinnest, when the boundaries literally blurred. The aerial ships and the ferry host served a profound cultural purpose. They were a narrative container for the utterly inexplicable. A strange, glowing formation in the clouds became a celestial longship. Unearthly sounds in a storm became the hunting cries of the Shia. This folklore provided a complete, spiritually coherent explanation for phenomena that science had not yet begun to dissect. The ethereal artwork this inspired captures that haunting ambiguity. Paintings from the Celtic Revival period show these spectral fleets as translucent, luminous shapes emerging from rolling banks of fog, more impression than machine, sailing on an ocean of air. They are beautiful and deeply unsettling. This legend challenges our need for a single, definitive answer. Was the slua she an ancient people witnessing unusual plasma formations or electrical storms in the rugged Atlantic climate? Quite possibly, was it also a genuine belief in a parallel world that occasionally bled into our own? To the people of the time, absolutely. The power of the Celtic sky ship is that it allows for both truths to exist at once. It reminds us that every mysterious light in the sky is first filtered through the lens of belief, and for a culture that saw the supernatural in every hill and stream, the sky could only be filled with stories. Even the most practical escape can become a legend when it happens from a great height. Among China's ancient sage kings, Emperor Shun is remembered not just for his virtue, but for a moment of brilliant improvisation. The story, recorded in texts like the records of the Grand Historian, tells of a time when Shun's jealous father and brother tried to kill him. They set fire to a tall granary while Shun was on the roof. With the flames rising and the ladder removed, his situation seemed hopeless, but Shun, thinking quickly, grabbed two large conical reed hats used for sun and rain. Holding one in each hand, he leaped from the burning structure. The hats caught the air, slowing his descent just enough for him to land safely on the ground, escaping the trap. On its surface, this is a simple tale of cleverness and survival, a folkloric explanation for how a beloved hero cheated death. Yet when we look closer, it reveals something more. This brief account, dating from a time over 4,000 years ago, may be one of humanity's earliest recorded concepts of a parachute. The physics are rudimentary but sound. A large, lightweight, concave object like a wide-brimmed hat will create significant air resistance. If Shun held them out to his sides or even above his head as he jumped, they would have acted as a crude drag device, converting his deadly fall into a survivable, slower descent. It is not a controlled glide, but it is a fundamental principle of aerodynamics in action. The story's plausibility hinges on its simplicity. It does not require magic or advanced technology, only observation and quick thinking. Someone somewhere might have noticed how a broad leaf or a piece of cloth flutters down, much slower than a stone. This moment of recognition, encoded in a legend about an emperor, represents a spark of practical understanding. This spark fits perfectly into the long, brilliant arc of Chinese aviation history we have already seen. It is a precursor, a conceptual cousin to Lu Ban's wooden hawk kites. Where the kite seeks to harness lift to rise, the reed hat seeks to maximize drag to fall safely. Both are born from watching how objects interact with the air. This foundational curiosity would, centuries later, lead to breathtakingly sophisticated inventions. By the 2nd century before the Common Era, Chinese generals were using large, man-lifting kites for reconnaissance, sending observers high above battlefields. And by the late medieval period, records show acrobats and entertainers using parasols to perform daring jumps from towers, a direct practical application of the same principle from the Shun legend. Let us picture that moment of escape for a final, dramatic thought. Imagine the scene, the crackle of the fire, the smoke stinging the eyes. On the roof's edge, a figure looks down at the hard earth far below. He takes two ordinary objects of daily life and sees in them a possibility no one else has seen. He does not fly, but he defies gravity's worst consequence. He jumps and the air itself becomes his ally. That single, desperate leap is more than a story. It is a testament to the human instinct to look at a tool and ask, what else can this do? It is the same instinct that would one day weave silk into parachutes and bamboo into rockets, forever changing our relationship with the sky. The leap of Emperor Shun was a moment of human ingenuity against gravity, but Slavic folklore offers a different kind of defiance, one woven from pure enchantment. Here, flight belongs to the magical and the monstrous, to creatures and dwellings that move by their own mysterious will. At the heart of these tales is the firebird or jartitsa, a being of breathtaking beauty and peril. It is often depicted as a large bird with glowing, golden plumage and eyes like crystals, each feather shining with a light so brilliant it could illuminate an entire hall at midnight. The quest to capture even a single fallen feather from this creature drives many a hero into the dark, enchanted forest, for possessing it promises both great fortune and great trouble. The firebird is less an animal and more a force of nature given form, a living piece of the sun or a wandering wildfire, beautiful, untamable, and deeply connected to the other world. Its flight is the movement of celestial light across the night sky, a natural phenomenon mythologized into a chase. Alongside this radiant creature exists a far more grounded, yet equally mobile wonder. Deep in the same mystical woods stands the hut of Baba Yaga, the fearsome and ambiguous witch of Slavic lore. Her dwelling is no ordinary cottage. It stands perched on a pair of giant, bony chicken legs, and it is surrounded by a fence topped with human skulls. Most remarkably, the hut is alive. It can spin around on its legs and, according to many tales, even move through the forest, its door facing the visitor only when Baba Yaga allows it. While not a flying machine in the conventional sense, this is a traveling structure, a mobile home that obeys the commands of its mistress. It represents a primal fantasy of a dwelling that is not fixed to one place, that can orient itself to its owner's will and perhaps even carry her across the land. These are not descriptions of technology, but they are profound expressions of the same imaginative impulse we have seen worldwide. The Firebird embodies humanity's captivation with self-illuminated flight, with a light source that moves intelligently through the air, much like the strange lights reported in countless other cultures. Baba Yaga's hut, meanwhile, presents a concept of animated architecture, a building with agency. In the harsh, vast landscapes of Eastern Europe, where the deep forest was both provider and profound danger, these myths made sense of the unknown. A strange, flickering light in the distance became the Firebird. An oddly shaped, isolated hut discovered in a clearing might feel, in the creeping dread of the woods, as if it had turned to watch you approach. The art born from these stories makes their magic tangible. Classic animations from Soviet studios bring the Firebird to life with symphonies of color, its feathers shimmering like molten gold as it soars through painted skies. The painter Viktor Vasnetsov captured the eerie majesty of Baba Yaga in oils, showing her hurtling through the air not in a hut, but in a giant mortar, steering with a pestle and sweeping away her tracks with a broom. These images cement the legends in our minds, blending the folkloric with a visceral sense of motion. They show us that before blueprints, the human mind first dreamed of flight and mobile homes through the language of myth, transforming the mysteries of fire and forest into stories where the very world could turn on a chicken leg to face you. High in the Andes, the origin of an empire begins not with a coronation, but with an act of earth-shattering power. The Inca foundation myth tells of 4 Ayar brothers and their sisters who emerged from the sacred caves of Paccaritambo to found the great city of Cusco. Among them, Ayar Kachai stood apart. His name itself hints at his nature, often translated as salt or grit, but his power was explosive. He carried a mighty sling, and with a single stone, he could cleave mountains and create deep ravines, terraforming the landscape with what sounds less like strength and more like controlled demolition. His siblings, fearful and jealous of this destructive capability, devised a plan. They tricked Ayar Kachai into returning to the Cave of Origin to retrieve forgotten sacred items, and once he was inside, they sealed the entrance with a massive stone, trapping him forever. In the most common version of the tale, he was transformed into a powerful stone idol, an immobile huaka or sacred object, but some lesser-known strands of the story whisper something else. They suggest that Ayar Kachai, in his final moment, did not simply turn to stone. He achieved a form of liberation, rising from his earthly prison in a manner that could be interpreted as flight or instantaneous travel, transcending his physical form entirely. This myth is a masterpiece of political and spiritual storytelling. On one level, it explains the Inca right to rule. By eliminating the dangerously powerful Ayar Kachai, the remaining brother, Ayar Manco, who would become Manco Capac, the first Inca ruler, could establish order and civilization. The story legitimizes the ruling lineage by showing its divine origin and its necessary, tough-minded decision to secure a stable foundation. The connection to celestial origins is profound. The Incas saw themselves as the children of the sun, in Thai, and their emergence from the womb of the earth, the Pacarina cave, followed by a journey to found Cusco, mirrors a celestial destiny manifesting on the ground. The immense stonework of sites like Saqqara, with its colossal, perfectly fitted boulders, stands as a testament to a culture that believed in moving and mastering the very bones of the earth, much like Ayar himself. But what are we to make of Ayar power and his ambiguous end? The ability to shatter mountains with a sling stone goes far beyond heroic exaggeration. It reads like a description of concussive force, of sonic booms or explosive projectiles. Could this be a folk memory of advanced tools or weapons, perhaps even energy-based technology, remembered as supernatural might? His entrapment and transformation are even more suggestive. The idea of being sealed in a cave and then undergoing a metamorphosis into something else is a global motif for ascension or dimensional shift. The alternative interpretation, that he achieved flight, paints a picture of a being who shed his physical limitations, perhaps even boarding a craft that allowed him to escape his rocky tomb. Modern artistic depictions often lean into this speculative vein, showing Ayar not as a man turning to stone, but as a figure engulfed in a vortex of light or standing before a luminous portal within the mountain, moments from translocation. Whether he became a stone idol or a streak of light across the Andean sky, the core of the legend remains. Ayar represents the raw, untamable power of creation and destruction that must be integrated or contained for a society to be born. His story, carved into the landscape and told for generations, binds the Inca people to a past where the boundaries between human, stone, and sky were beautifully, terrifyingly fluid. It suggests that the founders of this mighty empire did not just walk from a cave, they emerged from a moment of cataclysmic, potentially aerial wonder. The legends of fiery birds and mountain-shattering heroes find a startling parallel in the quiet villages of the Bandiagara escarpment in Mali. Here, the Dogon people preserve an oral tradition of breathtaking specificity, centered not on a machine but on visitors. They speak of the Namo, ancestral beings described as amphibious, fish-like creatures who came from the sky in a great, spinning arc that landed with a thunderous roar, bringing the fundamentals of civilization, language, law, and agriculture to humanity. This arc, they say, was accompanied by fire and wind, and when it touched the earth, it gouged out a deep crater. The Namo themselves are depicted in stunning Dogon artwork as figures with both human and piscine features, often shown in a posture of descent, their bodies arcing toward the ground. These carvings and masks are not merely art, they are a sacred record. The story alone is a powerful myth of cultural origins, but what catapulted it into global controversy is a single, astonishing detail embedded within it. The Dogon stated that the Namo came from a star in the constellation Canis Major, the star we call Sirius. More specifically, they claimed their teachers came from a tiny, dense, and invisible companion star that orbits Sirius every 50 years. They called this star Po Tolo, Tolo meaning star, and Po referring to the smallest known seed, a poetic name for something extraordinarily small and heavy. For generations, anthropologists recorded this lore as fascinating mythology. Then, in the 20th century, astronomy confirmed something extraordinary. Sirius does indeed have a companion, Sirius B. It is a white dwarf star, incredibly dense and invisible to the naked eye, and its orbital period is not 50, but approximately 50.1 years. The Dogon, without telescopes, knew about a star they could not see, and they knew its most critical characteristic, how the controversy ignited and has burned for decades. One explanation is cultural contamination. By the time the most detailed anthropological studies were done in the 1930s and 40s, the Dogon had been in contact with European missionaries, teachers, and explorers for generations. It is possible, skeptics argue, that this esoteric astronomical knowledge, which was becoming known in the West, was transmitted and then seamlessly incorporated into their existing myths. The Dogon, after all, are masterful integrators, weaving new understandings into their complex cosmology. Yet, Dogon elders have consistently maintained this knowledge is ancient, passed down long before European contact. Their cosmological diagrams, drawn in the sand during ceremonies, map the Sirius system with a clarity that feels instructional. If it was not contamination, could it have been independent discovery? Could generations of meticulous naked eye observation have deduced the existence of an invisible, massive object tugging on the bright star of Sirius? While possible, it stretches credibility for many astronomers. The feat requires instruments. This leaves the most provocative possibility, the one that makes this legend a cornerstone of the ancient astronaut theory. Could the Dogon tradition be a preserved memory of contact with a technologically advanced civilization, one that traveled from the Sirius system and imparted this knowledge of their home star as part of a greater lesson? The Nommo in this reading are not gods or spirits but interstellar travelers, their amphibious nature perhaps a misinterpretation of sealed environment suits or a description of their biological origin from a watery world. Their spinning, roaring arc becomes a spacecraft, the diagrams become a lesson in astrophysics. The debate is a perfect microcosm of our entire journey. It pits the incredible capacity of human observation and oral tradition against the staggering possibility of a forgotten chapter in human history. Whether you see it as proof of ancient contact or a testament to the human genius for weaving the cosmos into story, the Dogon mystery forces a humbling realization. Their star maps drawn in the sand of the African plateau point to a truth far above, challenging us to reconsider where knowledge truly begins. The power to command the wind itself was said to belong to one of history's wisest rulers. Across Jewish and Islamic traditions, the throne of King Solomon is not merely a seat of judgment, but a vehicle of miraculous travel. In the Quran, it is stated explicitly that Solomon was given power over the wind, which would blow at his command, carrying his magnificent throne wherever he wished to go, from one end of his kingdom to the other in the blink of an eye. In other tales, like those found in the Talmud and later folklore, the throne itself is described as a masterpiece of divine engineering, sometimes borne aloft by eagles or demons, but most often soaring on the currents of the air that obeyed his word. This was the ultimate symbol of a ruler whose wisdom granted him dominion not just over people, but over the very forces of nature. His flight was not an escape or a quest, it was an administrative tool, a manifestation of perfect God-given order. To cover vast distances instantly was to oversee a sprawling empire with divine efficiency, to dispense justice anywhere at a moment's notice. The imagery this inspired is breathtaking. Classical Persian miniatures show Solomon enthroned on a magnificent carpet or platform, high above the clouds, surrounded by a court of angels, animals, and jinn, all floating in serene procession. The message is clear: his authority literally transcends the earthly realm. So are these stories pure metaphor, beautiful illustrations of spiritual sovereignty? Or could they whisper of something more tangible? The descriptions are curiously specific: a throne that moves at great speed, directed by will, powered by the harnessed wind. This does not sound like a magic spell so much as a set of functions, a technology of levitation and propulsion attributed to divine favor. The idea captivated later mystical traditions, especially the Kabbalah, where Solomon's throne became a complex symbol of the Merkaba, the divine chariot, representing the process of ascending through spiritual realms. The flying throne was no longer just about physical travel, but about the soul's journey toward enlightenment, the ultimate vehicle for ascending to higher knowledge. This legend, then, operates on two profound levels. It is a political and spiritual allegory for divinely sanctioned power, and it is also a precise, recurring dream of effortless, will-directed travel. In a world of deserts and arduous journeys, what greater power could a king possess than to make the distances between his subjects simply disappear? Solomon's throne asks us whether the ancient distinction between a miracle and a machine is as clear as we think, or if, in the stories of the wise, the two were always beautifully intertwined. The sky was a bridge and the gods were about to cross it. In the ancient Shinto chronicles of Japan, the Kojiki, the very islands themselves, are born from a celestial journey. Before there was land, the brother and sister deities Izanagi and Izanami stood upon the Aim no Yukihashi, the floating bridge of heaven. This was not a solid structure of wood or stone, but a mystical, shimmering pathway between the realm of the gods and the chaotic brine below. From this vantage, they dipped a jeweled spear into the primordial ocean, and when they lifted it, the drops that fell from its tip coagulated into the first island, Onogoro. But their work was not done. To descend and walk upon this new creation, they did not simply step down. They used a vessel, the Aim no Iwafune, the heavenly rock boat. This is a crucial detail often overlooked in summaries of the myth. The gods, capable of shaping reality, chose to travel in a specific craft. The name itself is evocative, a boat or ship, fune, made of solid, enduring rock, Iwa, from the heavens, Aim. It suggests not a fragile reed raft, but a substantial, perhaps even metallic or stone-like vehicle designed for a voyage between dimensions. In classic Japanese art, this moment is rendered with breathtaking serenity. Woodblock prints and painted scrolls show the two deities, regal and calm, standing within or beside a sturdy, boat-shaped form, often depicted amid swirling clouds or gentle waves, completing their descent from the bridge of mist and stars to the solid ground of the newborn world. Symbolically, this rock boat is the ultimate conduit. It physically embodies the connection between the heavenly plane of pure spirit, Takamagahara, and the material, earthly plane we inhabit. It is the vehicle that makes the divine tangible, that allows the formative powers of creation to touch and shape the physical world. Without it, the gods remain aloof, separated by an impassable gulf. The boat itself becomes a sacred archetype, a means of transport that is also an act of genesis. This pattern feels hauntingly familiar. A divine being or beings arriving from above in a distinct vehicle is a story told across the globe. We have seen it in the Dogon Nomo's spinning ark, in Ezekiel's wheeled Merkaba, and in the sky heroes of Aboriginal Australia. The specifics change, the cultural interpretations vary wildly, but the core image remains, a structured object descending from the sky, carrying intelligent agents who then interact with and often fundamentally alter the world below. In the Japanese context, this was not a one-time event. The heavenly rock boat established a precedent, a mythological truth that the gods travel and that their journeys bridge the ultimate divide. Later folklore is filled with tales of ghost ships and phantom boats, the Funayure sailing the coastal mists, perhaps distant echoes of that first sacred voyage. The legend of Izanagi and Izanami asks us a subtle but profound question. Why a boat if they were omnipotent spirits? Why would a myth so concerned with origins bother to include the detail of their transportation? Perhaps because the storytellers understood, on some deep level, that crossing such a vast gap, whether between heaven and earth or between the unknown and the known, always requires a vessel. The rock boat is that first perfect vehicle carrying the seed of a world across the void. High on a hill shrouded in morning mist, a fortress breaks the rules of stone and earth. From the dense forests and amber coasts of the Baltic region comes a legend as enduring as the oak, the tale of the flying Lithuanian castle. This was no stationary stronghold of lords and knights, but a spectral fortress said to lift from its mound and sail through the air, appearing on one hilltop only to vanish and materialize on another, a phantom citadel guarding the land itself. The stories often swirl around specific, spiritually charged sites, like the legendary Hill of Witches or the profound Hill of Crosses, a location where thousands upon thousands of crosses have been planted as acts of silent faith and defiance. The narrative paints a picture of a castle that could not be besieged, for when enemies approached, the very ground it stood upon would become sky, leaving invaders grasping at empty air. On one level, this is a perfect folk explanation for the very real, imposing hill forts that crown the Lithuanian landscape. These ancient earthworks, built by Baltic tribes long before written records, are formidable feats of early engineering. To a later peasant gazing up at their overgrown ramparts, the idea that such a place could simply move might have been a way to explain why different hills bore similar, imposing ruins, or to account for the strange, awe-inspiring feeling such places evoke. The legend also finds a partner in a well-documented natural phenomenon, the Fata Morgana. This complex mirage caused by temperature inversions bending light can make distant objects, like a castle on a far hill, appear to float, stretch, or hover above the horizon. A traveler seeing the distorted image of a real fortress dancing in the haze could easily return home with a story of a castle that had taken flight. Yet, like so many of these tales, the flying castle transcends simple explanation. During the long centuries of foreign occupation, when Lithuanian culture, language, and faith were under relentless pressure, this legend took on a profound new meaning. The castle that could not be captured became a powerful symbol of national spirit, an indomitable soul that could not be pinned down or destroyed. Its magical flight represented the resilience of identity, the idea that the heart of the nation could always escape subjugation, waiting silently in the clouds for the moment to return. This transforms the story from a quirky folktale into a vital myth of resistance. The imagery it inspires is haunting, a fusion of the solid and the spectral. Picture a medieval stone castle, its towers stark against a brooding Baltic sky, but its foundations melting into tendrils of mist, as if it is moments from drifting away like a ghost ship on a sea of cloud. It is a vision of home that is also a promise, a fortress that belongs not to any one plot of land, but to the very idea of Lithuania itself. The flying castle asks us whether the greatest strength of a people lies not in walls that can be battered down, but in stories that can never be contained. The phantom castle dissolves into mist, but another sky being is carved from towering cedar and roars with the voice of the storm. Across the vast tapestry of Native American cultures, from the Great Plains to the Pacific Northwest, the Thunderbird reigns supreme. This is no ordinary creature of folklore, it is a primal force of nature given form. Imagine a raptor of impossible scale, its wingspan blotting out the sun, each beat of its powerful feathers echoing as the rolling thunder that shakes the earth. When it blinks, lightning arcs from its piercing eyes, splitting the sky. It is a being of immense power and profound ambiguity, a protector of humanity against monstrous forces, yet also a manifestation of the untamable violence of the heavens themselves. The Thunderbird is deeply woven into the spiritual fabric of countless nations. For the Lakota, it is Wakinyan, a sacred being central to vision quests and the Hayoka ceremony. For the peoples of the Pacific Northwest, like the Kwakwaka'wakwa and Haida, it is a paramount crest, a symbol of lineage and supernatural authority carved into the faces of towering totem poles. These monumental poles tell stories in cedar, with the Thunderbird often perched at the very top, its powerful, curved beak and outstretched wings dominating the skyline, a permanent guardian watching over the community. Alongside this mighty bird, another skyward journey appears in the legends of the same coastal forests. Here, stories are told of magical canoes that can travel to the sky world, paddled by heroes or spirits through celestial rivers formed by the Milky Way. These sky canoes, like the Thunderbird itself, are not mechanical inventions. They are spiritual vessels, representations of the soul's journey, of shamanic travel between realms, and of the deep understanding that the sky is not a barrier but a pathway to other worlds. So where could such a pervasive and specific image originate? One fascinating, grounded theory points to the very earth beneath their feet. For centuries, native peoples discovered enormous, fossilized bones eroding from cliffs and riverbanks in the American West. The remains of pterosaurs, those flying reptiles of the Cretaceous period, with wingspans reaching 30 feet or more, and the even more massive bones of creatures like Tyrannosaurus rex, could easily have been interpreted by ancient observers as the skeletons of gigantic birds. Finding a fossilized skull with a large crest and a pointed beak might perfectly inspire the image of a supernatural raptor whose remains proved it once ruled the skies. This natural explanation, however, does nothing to diminish the spiritual and cultural power of the legend. The Thunderbird became the perfect narrative container for the awesome, terrifying, and life-giving power of thunderstorms, which could bring both nourishing rain and destructive fire. Contemporary native artists continue this tradition, translating the ancient symbol into stunning paintings, jewelry, and sculptures that pulse with modern vitality, keeping the connection between the people, the land, and the sky world vibrantly alive. The Thunderbird, whether born from fossil or revelation, ultimately represents a profound truth. It is humanity's attempt to give a face, a name, and a story to the overwhelming forces of the natural world, to find meaning in the roar above and the flash that illuminates the dark. The roar of the Thunderbird speaks of nature's raw power, but in the heart of Islamic tradition, a gentler, more luminous creature carried a prophet to the divine. Burak is described as a being of breathtaking beauty, a celestial steed smaller than a mule but larger than a donkey, with a radiant white coat, a human-like face, and magnificent wings. This was no ordinary animal but a divine vehicle created from light itself, entrusted with the most sacred night journey in Islam, the Isra and Miraj. According to the tradition, the angel Jibril brought Burak to the Prophet Muhammad in Mecca. The Prophet mounted this mystical creature, and in a single night they traveled the vast distance to the farthest mosque in Jerusalem, a journey known as the Isra. But that was only the beginning. From the sacred rock in Jerusalem, Burak then ascended with Muhammad through the seven heavens, passing prophets and witnessing the wonders of the celestial realms, all the way to the presence of God in the Miraj or Ascension. This was not a flight across land, but a voyage between dimensions, a spiritual transit made possible by this winged guide. Burak's very form is a profound symbol. The human face represents intelligence and consciousness, the wings signify spiritual ascent, and the body of a steed embodies swiftness, loyalty, and noble service. It is a perfect fusion, a living vehicle that bridges the earthly and the heavenly, the physical and the sublime. It represents travel that is both incredibly fast and deeply reverent, a journey where the mount itself is a participant in the miracle. The influence of this legend on Islamic art and spirituality is immeasurable. For centuries, artists from Persia to the Ottoman Empire have tried to capture the ineffable beauty of this moment. In exquisite miniatures, we see Burak depicted with a delicate, almost ethereal form, often with a peacock-like tail and a gentle, human face, standing patiently as the prophet prepares for his journey. The skies in these paintings are not empty, they are filled with intricate patterns of gold leaf, swirling clouds, and cascading angelic figures, visualizing the celestial pathway. Calligraphic depictions of the prophet's night journey, with Burak's name woven into the sacred text, turn the story into a visual prayer. These artworks are not mere illustrations, they are devotional aids, invitations to contemplate the possibility of a journey that transcends all physical limits. In a faith that generally avoids depicting prophetic figures, the image of Burak becomes a powerful, acceptable focus for visualizing the miraculous. The legend of Burak completes a fascinating triad we have seen across cultures, where the Vimana is a crafted machine and the Lung Gampa runner is the perfected human body. Burak is a divinely created living vehicle. It answers the same human desire for transcendent travel, but frames it as a gift of grace, a sacred companionship on the road to the ultimate encounter. That single winged step from the rock in Jerusalem opened a doorway in the human imagination, one painted in gold and lapis lazuli for all who dream of a journey guided by light. Fire and sky have always been intertwined, and in the ancient highlands of Armenia, they merged in the form of a god. Vahan was not a distant deity, but a dynamic force of fire, war, and storms, celebrated as a dragon-slaying hero whose chariot was the sun itself. He did not walk or sail, he rode. His vehicle was described as a blazing chariot that tore across the heavens, its path a streak of flame and thunder. His very birth was a celestial event, said to be accompanied by the heavens catching fire and the sea turning to blood, a mythic account that reads like a description of a volcanic eruption paired with a blood-red lunar eclipse. This was more than a story, it was an explanation written in the language of epic, for the people watching the terrifying beauty of a lightning storm or the relentless journey of the sun. Vahan provided a face and a narrative. The fiery chariot was a perfect personification of the sun's daily arc or the sudden, violent flash of lightning across a stormy sky. It transformed a terrifying, impersonal natural force into the action of a knowable, heroic figure, a protector who battled dragons of chaos as he rode. This archetype is a powerful thread in the tapestry of Indo-European belief. You can hear its echo in the Greek Helios, who guided his golden chariot from dawn to dusk, and in the Hindu Surya, whose radiant chariot was drawn by 7 horses representing the days of the week. Each culture looked at the same brilliant orb crossing the sky and saw a divine driver, a hero on a daily journey. The imagery this inspired is both ancient and timeless. Early Armenian artifacts and later illuminated manuscripts often depict Vahan with a crown of flames, standing firm in his chariot as horses of fire strain against the reins, pulling him through a cosmos of swirling clouds and stars. These visualizations were not just art, they were cosmology, a way of mapping the heavens with story. The legend served a profound dual purpose. It answered the primal human need to explain the unexplainable, giving order to the chaos of weather and astronomy. Simultaneously, it elevated the ideal of the heroic warrior, linking human courage to cosmic power. To slay a dragon on Earth was to mirror the god who brought order to the chaotic sky. So was Vahan merely a poetic description of the sun? In one sense, absolutely. But in another, deeper sense, he represents the moment observation becomes myth. When our ancestors saw that streak of light in the heavens, they did not just see plasma or radiation, they saw a chariot, a hero, a story hurtling toward them. It is the same instinct that makes us, even today, look at a shooting star and see a wish instead of a burning rock. The fiery chariot reminds us that every scientific fact begins life as a human wonder. The fiery chariot of Vahan blazes a trail across mythic skies, but centuries later, sailors would tell of a different kind of phantom, one born not from gods but from human folly. A ghostly glow haunts the tempest-tossed waters off the Cape of Good Hope, the spectral form of a 17th-century merchant ship condemned to never make port. This is the Flying Dutchman, a legend that began as a maritime curse and slowly ascended into the very clouds. According to the tale, the ship's captain, often named Van der Decken, swore a blasphemous oath in the face of a howling gale, vowing to round the Cape even if it took until Judgment Day. For his hubris, he and his crew were damned to sail the oceans for eternity, a permanent warning against defying the natural order. The ship itself became an omen of doom for any sailor who glimpsed it, a spectral vessel often described not just plowing through waves but soaring through the air, its tattered sails billowing in a wind no living soul could feel, surrounded by an unearthly, ghastly luminescence. This evolution from a cursed ship to a flying phantom is a fascinating leap. On the stormy frontier of the sea, where the horizon melts into mist and reality bends, the legend found its explanations in very real, terrifying phenomena. A Fata Morgana mirage could distort a distant ship on the horizon, making it appear to float impossibly high above the water, a phantom castle of the sea. Even more chilling was St. Elmo's fire, the electrical discharge that dances on a ship's masts and rigging during thunderstorms, casting the entire vessel in an eerie blue-green glow. To a superstitious crew already fearing for their lives in a squall, the sight of their own ship or another wreathed in such silent fire could easily be interpreted as an encounter with the damned Dutchman itself. The legend's power was captured magnificently in art and music. 19th-century maritime paintings show the ghost ship emerging from a bank of storm cloud, its hull a ghostly grey, its sails luminous against a dark sea, a masterpiece of romantic dread. Richard Wagner's opera Der Fliegende Holländer gave the story a tragic, romantic heart, its haunting overture evoking the roar of the sea and the captain's eternal longing for redemption. And who can forget its iconic appearance in film, from classic swashbucklers to modern adventures, where the Dutchman materializes from a rolling fog, a CGI spectre reminding us that some curses never fade. The Flying Dutchman completes a crucial circle in our journey. It began as a sailing story, a cautionary tale about the dangers of the sea and the curse of unchecked ambition. But as it passed from sailor to sailor, from port to pub, the story itself took flight. The ship left the water and entered the air, becoming one of the West's most potent modern legends of a flying machine. It proves that the human imagination, when faced with the vast, empty canvas of the ocean or the sky, will always paint in the same colors, filling the void with stories of doomed journeys, glowing vessels, and warnings from a world just beyond our sight. Our journey through legends ends not in the distant past but on the cusp of the modern world. In the autumn of 1896, something impossible appeared in the skies over California. Newspapers from San Francisco to Sacramento carried frantic reports from policemen, farmers, and respected citizens who swore they had seen a massive, cigar-shaped craft moving silently against the stars, adorned with brilliant, blinding lights. This was not a solitary sighting. For months, a wave of these mysterious airship reports swept across the United States, from the Midwest to the Great Lakes, peaking again in the spring of 1897. The descriptions were eerily consistent. Witnesses spoke of a dark, elongated hull, like a submarine built for the air, often with a luminous gondola slung beneath it. Some claimed to hear voices floating down from the craft or the faint sound of singing. In one of the most bizarre accounts from Texas, a rancher reported that an airship had dropped an anchor, which snagged on his fence, and a man with a strange accent descended a rope ladder to retrieve it, apologizing for the inconvenience before the craft soared away into the night. These were not vague lights in the sky. These were structured vehicles observed years before the Wright brothers' first powered flight at Kitty Hawk. The public was captivated and terrified. Newspapers of the era, like the San Francisco Call and the Dallas Morning News, printed these stories with sensational headlines, their pages filled with detailed witness sketches that showed fantastical machines with propellers, wings, and searchlights. The artistic renditions from the time are fascinating, blending the familiar technology of steamships and locomotives with the dream of flight, creating images that look both quaint and profoundly unsettling. So what were people really seeing? The theories are as varied as the reports. One strong possibility is mass hysteria and misidentification. The planet Venus was particularly bright in the evening sky during that period, and its light, seen through haze or clouds, could have sparked the initial rumors. Once the story was in the papers, the power of suggestion took over, turning every lantern on a kite or every unusual star into a phantom airship. Others point to ingenious hoaxes. Several individuals, including a well-known liar from Texas, eventually claimed credit for fabricating stories and even building crude models to fool their neighbors, seeking nothing more than fleeting fame. Yet there remains a more tantalizing possibility, that of secret invention. The 1890s were a feverish time of technological leaps, with inventors like Thomas Edison and Nikola Tesla capturing the public imagination. Could a brilliant, independent inventor have actually succeeded in creating a functional dirigible in secret, testing it under cover of darkness? While no credible evidence or patent ever surfaced to support this, the idea felt plausible to a public awaiting the next great marvel. And of course, for modern audiences, the descriptions sound unmistakably like early reports of what we would later call unidentified flying objects, suggesting the phenomenon is far older than the age of flying saucers. The great airship wave of the 1890s is the perfect final legend. It acts as a direct bridge between the ancient myths and the technological reality about to dawn. For centuries, humanity dreamed of flying machines in the language of gods and magic. Here, on the eve of making that dream a fact, the stories suddenly spoke in the language of engineering, of propellers and electric lights. The archetype had not changed, only its costume. The sky was no longer filled with fiery chariots or winged palaces, but with mysterious airships, a new vessel for our oldest wonder. It proves that the mystery does not end with the invention of the airplane, it simply evolves. The human need to look up and imagine what might be looking back is a story with no final chapter. From the Vimanas of India to the phantom airships of the 1890s, we have traced a single, unbroken thread woven through the tapestry of human history. It is a thread spun from wonder, stretching across continents and millennia, connecting the golden palaces of epic India to the ghostly galleons over stormy seas. These 25 legends, in all their dazzling variety, are not isolated curiosities. They are chapters in the same story, humanity's oldest and most persistent dream, the dream of flight. Each culture, in its own language, with its own gods and heroes, looked up at the same empty sky and dared to fill it. They filled it with chariots of fire and ships of cloud, with silent birds of death and thunderous arcs from the stars. They dreamed in stone and gold, in paint and poetry, long before metal ever left the ground. So what does this grand chorus of stories truly mean? Are they merely beautiful metaphors, symbolic tales of spiritual ascension or political power dressed in the glamour of wings? Could they be the fragmented, mythologized memories of real events, of natural disasters or early technological experiments misremembered across generations? Or do they point to something more profound, a whisper from a forgotten epoch when the line between myth and history was not so clearly drawn? The answer, perhaps, is not a single truth, but a spectrum of understanding. These legends hold up a mirror to the human spirit itself. They show us a species forever yearning to transcend its limits, to conquer distance and gravity, to touch the realm of the gods. Whether inspired by the observation of a gliding seed, the terror of a lightning storm, or the awe of a celestial event, our ancestors transformed raw experience into narrative. They built stories to explain the unexplainable, to find meaning in the mysteries above, and in doing so, they laid the imaginative foundation upon which all future flight would be built. The Wright brothers did not invent the dream of flight, they inherited it. They were the heirs to Daedalus and Lu Ban, to the makers of the Saqqara Bird and the dreamers of the magic carpet. Their genius was in engineering a reality that had already lived for centuries in the human heart. So the next time you see an airplane trace a white line across the blue, or watch a satellite glide silently among the stars, remember the ancient ones who first charted that course in their minds. The journey did not begin on a wind-swept dune at Kitty Hawk. It began in the campfires and temples, the epics and the folk tales, in every culture that ever lifted its eyes to the heavens and wondered. The sky was never empty, it was always full of our dreams. Now we turn the question to you. After this journey through 25 legends, where does your curiosity land? Do you see these stories as pure myth, the beautiful inventions of a creative species? Or do you sense a deeper mystery, a hint of lost knowledge or forgotten contact echoing in these ancient accounts? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us which of these sky-bound legends captured your imagination most powerfully. If you enjoyed this voyage through historical mystery, be sure to subscribe for more journeys into the unexplained corners of our past. Thank you for watching, and until next time, keep looking up. The greatest stories are still written in the stars.